Hello my friends, thank you for joining me at Evolutionary Energy Arts once again. What I want to show you is the changes that have occurred when we compare the results of two different studies on plate motions. And the first study, this is the link to that, and I will have it for you. This was done in 2011. The second study is a new study. It was just done in 2018. And this is going to compare the motion of the plates in a 7-year period and how they've changed and where they've stayed the same, and it's really fascinating to look at. So if we look at the map, the red lines are basically the 2011 study. The black lines are the 2018. So we see that the plate motion in some areas, it's just increased in the same basic direction, perhaps changing 5 to 20 degrees. And in some places, it's completely 90 degrees or almost the exact opposite direction. And when we look at these locations where things are really different and changed, it's at the poles and it's at the South Atlantic anomaly. So let's take a look at what's going on here. Let's look at Antarctica first. So you see the plate motion with these red arrows. That's where the forces are going in the 2011 survey. Now a longer arrow is a faster movement. A shorter arrow is less movement. So we can see it's very, very changed from what it was. Radically different. Here you actually have the motion going in different directions. If we look at this one arrow here, we have north, pretty much a northeasterly direction, and now it's going a southeasterly. Same thing with this one. Same thing over here. And as we look, some have sped up and some have slowed down, but big differences at the southern plate, at the Antarctic plate. A change in direction, and the pressures over on this side of the plate have done the exact opposite. So fascinating. And over here we're looking at motion basically coming to a stop and slowing down. So this is really some fascinating stuff. Look over here at Cascadia. You can see the motion has increased, and then we see over here in the North American plate it's slightly changed, and it's gone from basically a west-southwesterly to more of just a southwesterly flow. And so the greatest changes are at the Antarctic plate and up basically at the poles. So that's what we would expect with pole shifts. And if we look over here, this is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and this is the South Atlantic Anomaly area, and we see definitely changes going on here. Whereas before in 2011 over here we had the motion going in basically a northwesterly direction. Now it's totally shifted to the southwest, or maybe west-southwest. The forces have changed. And then over here, when you look over here, it's pretty clear what's happening here, from the forces going on. This is going to grow, so what we're having is the Atlantic Ocean expanding as the Pacific is going to, basically decrease. But the Atlantic is increasing. But I would say perhaps one of the things that is most interesting of all is the stopping in the motion over here in the European area of the Eurasian plate. If you look at it, it's come to almost a dead stop. So geologically speaking, when things come to a dead stop, you expect that there's pressures building, typically. And pressure building usually is not a good thing, because you are usually going to get a bigger release later. And I mean, this is just my take on this, and let me listen to you guys. Maybe there's some disagreement, maybe there's some new light that could be shed on this motion. I'll have all these links for you guys. I find this fascinating to look at and to see the changes that are going on. There's big changes going on. You know, no doubt the poles are shifting. No doubt we're in that time period that has been talked about for, you know, millennia. Well, we're there. And there are definitely big changes going on. So, especially with that European plate over here, and it basically coming to a stop, the Antarctic plate, you know, kind of reversing direction almost. The Australian plate really hasn't changed too much, and as you can see, there's great motion on it. Very, very interesting to study. You know, it's like the more I look at things, the more I think, and I could be totally wrong, that one of the safest places to be is going to be in Africa. And not that I'm going to relocate to Africa or have any plans to. You never know. You just never know. But it's just like I've been starting to get that feeling more and more. And it would be interesting if Africa turns out to be the breadbasket of the world, wouldn't it? After all the changes are done, with all the famine and everything that, you know, the African continent has gone through. And of course, according to many theories, it's the cradle of our civilization, you know, according to the out of Africa theory and all. Wouldn't it be interesting if in the next era the world goes through, Africa is the breadbasket of the world? Interesting. But these plate motions are fascinating, and I think that you have to take them as verification for you're definitely an indication that yes, we're definitely in a pole shift here, because you see complete changes. Look at the changes in direction. Things are completely changing, and you know, at some point we may not recognize the face of the earth because it's going to be so vastly different. And so I have links for these studies. I'm going to try to get a second video out later on today because there's more stuff I wanted to cover, but I was just studying this for just staring at it for the last hour and a half, and it's just hitting me. So many things are hitting me with it. And one of the things it reminded me of was Edgar Cayce's talk about what's going to happen with the earth changes. And in one part he said the upper portion of Europe will be changed as in the twinkling of an eye. It's just going to be an immediate thing. And I'm wondering if it has anything to do with the plate coming to a standstill, basically, and slowing down and pressures building, and then all of a sudden there's a quick motion. And perhaps that quick motion would end up causing, you know, disruption of ice sheets and glaciers and things along those lines. And you know, you got to wonder, but I feel that. I mean, that's kind of like the inner voice talking, saying that what we're seeing in this picture that we have here is the building up of pressure that will be released when that change in Northern Europe happens in a twinkling of an eye, when all of a sudden there's slippage and you have a major earthquake because of the change in direction in some of the plates and because of the pressure building, and thus we'll get what Cayce had seen in his visions. And you know, many of these things were supposed to have happened 10, 15, 20 years ago, and so some people will throw all these prophecies out because the timeline was wrong, and he's off time-wise. But then again, the changes that he's talking about, They make perfect sense with what we see starting to happen, and they also jive with so many changes talked about by so many other people. So, perhaps the timing was off, and perhaps that's because of our influence and how we can actually change and bend reality according to what energy we put out there. Do you remember I keep calling them doctor, but Masaru Emoto's experiments with water? Our consciousness changes water. This world is full of water, and it basically just shows that our consciousness can create reality. So if we are visualizing a gentle transition, we can definitely affect that. If we are basically seeing the earth changes happen at a slower pace, more and more people are visualizing this, the earth changes happening at a slower pace, seeing people being able to get out of the dangerous zones with plenty of time and move to safer zones, we can totally transform the way that the changes are going to come. And the changes are coming, but we could transform it, and we could save so many people and start building that beautiful new world that is spoken of in all these different prophecies. Whether you're talking biblical, whether you're talking Edgar Cayce's visions, whether you're talking the Hopi Indians and many other tribes and different groups across the whole planet, there's amazing similarities, and I'm going to touch on that in the next video I do, between so many of these prophecies that they're tapping into the same thing completely. And if we look at what's going on at the upper level winds right now, it's fascinating. It really is. We still have that main vortex going on in Siberia, or actually at the top of the Urals in Russia. Very strong circulation. We have an increased strong circulation going on over Greenland and northern Canada. We also have other vortices developing. It's interesting because it reminds me of that plasma experiment. It just so looks like what we saw with that plasma experiment. And as everything slows down, as the magnetic charge gets weaker and weaker and weaker, you get all these vortices developing instead of one strong north polar vortex. So I don't know, man. This just makes perfect sense to me. Completely perfect sense to me. Plasma core, electric universe, expanding Earth. It all seems to go and seems to be so incredibly logical. So what's going to happen next? That's the big question. I do think that we're in for a huge shift, and these upper level winds are just fascinating to watch, and I wish I had more friends that were meteorologists to confirm to me that these look unusual, to say the least. It's pretty amazing. And some had said, well, what about what's going on in Antarctica as far as the vortex there, the polar vortex? And as you can see, basically it's only moved slightly towards New Zealand and Australia as far as the polar vortex, but it's relatively close to true south as we would know it. It hasn't moved like the north, and it has a more traditional singular vortex going on, not like what you see in the north. But it's fascinating. And then this is all the upper level winds. And as we can see, it's damn cold down there. It's basically 60 below. High 50s below. And as we can see, what happened before is happening again, basically, where you have 35, 33, 31 below over in northern Russia, 33 below in Canada, 32 below. And then when we get to the Arctic Circle, it's only 7 below, looking at like true North Pole. Not that 7 below is warm. It's not, obviously. Yet, it's way warmer than it is off in northern Russia or in Canada. And see, the flow is different than what we had before when we had the double vortex. When we had the vortex before, the double vortex, the flow was going on up into the circle. And so this is kind of emanating from the gyre area and moving on out and over. So as we go on into the spring and then the summer, it's going to be very, very interesting to follow all this. The wind pattern's fascinating. It's just fascinating to watch what's going on everywhere. And we have, as far as earthquakes, we have a ton of swarming again in California and also in Alaska. Very, very similar to what we've had. We have a couple big ones going on. A 6.4 in Indonesia at 171 kilometers and a 6.6 in New Guinea at 40 kilometers. And this 6.6, some people were showing as a 6.8. So thinking that the USGS downgraded it. One of the other things I really wanted to point out in getting a stronger feel for and about going back to that other map was Cascadia and the pressures that are going on here. I feel, and this is perhaps from my dream and a gut feeling that's building. I think that the next big earthquake we're going to have is going to be over in this area. It's going to be Washington, British Columbia, Oregon area. It feels like it. The pressure here has increased, as we see, where the pressure from the Pacific plate over here has stayed about the same and is flowing away. This plate has increased and it's going in, and a slight different angle from the North American plate. So it feels to me, I'm sensing something's got to give in that area, and that's the area that is just speaking to me. So just a heads up area, and we could definitely have some of those volcanoes going off in that area over there. So something to be aware of, my friends. And this one, I'm going to end it kind of quick. I just wanted to get this info out for you guys because it's just speaking to me, and I just felt like I had to get this out to you guys. And then I will be doing another video on some other things that are happening and some other semi-realizations that I've had that I want to share with you guys. And I thank you all for sending in your photos. It's awesome. There is some wild stuff going on. Thank you for sharing your dreams, your visions, and what's going on. We're in tune, my friends. We are so in tune with each other. I would say that like 90-something% of what's coming in is in total agreement. It's amazing. We're all feeling, for the most part, the same things. We're getting the same voice coming through to us. We're getting the same precautions and warnings and things that we must pay attention to. So thank you guys. I'm going to put together some composites of what you're sending in, and everybody will remain anonymous. But I want to share this with you guys because, it's just fascinating. Fascinating. And in the Bible it does say that in the end times people are going to dream and prophesize and receive visions. And it's not just the Bible. It's the same thing with the Native American traditions. It's the same thing with pretty much all the traditions when we look at it. This is a universal thing. We know what's happening. And so many of us have come here, right now, for the purpose of setting up the transition into the new era that we're going to step into, because it's so important for us. The most important thing for us right now is to set up the next era in mankind and on the earth so that it doesn't get polluted like it has with the corporations, the elite, with everything being twisted in such a perverse way, where it's people's lives don't mean as much as corporate profits. And that is not going to be the way the next era is. This is all about getting rid of that And that's what's happening now. It's Mother Earth, basically saying, and you could view it as Mother Earth working with Father, up in the sky, or however you want to view it. It doesn't really matter how we label it, because these energies, these beings, are way beyond labels, as are you and I. In our truest sense, we're way beyond labels, and one of the things we need to move past is past labeling things. And I've shared with you before, that's one of the things I'm working on really hard, is trying not to label things. Just trying to simply accept things the way they are, and to find gratitude and peace and love in them, and to enjoy every single day. Make precautions and make your plans. We shouldn't be foolish, and we shouldn't be, we should be prudent and set things up. Only somebody with their head in the sand wouldn't, go ahead and make some plans. But yet we should enjoy every single day and look at every single day as a blessing. So, give your family members, give your friends an extra hug, give them a big kiss. Tell them how much they mean to you. Share that. Let somebody know, I really appreciate you. Thank you a lot. Sending that energy out into the world will just start to change the world, and that's the type of energy we need to send into the world. So, no fear, prepare, love, positive attitude, positive vision, seeing past the necessary changes that are coming, start to conceptualize and visualize the new world to come that we are going to create right here on this beautiful planet. And I thank you guys so much. As always, thumbs up, subscribe and share with as many people as possible. Wake them up. We need to wake people up. We need to pull their heads out of the sand or out of other locations, and we need to make people realize what's coming up, but do it in a positive way. Because we're going to get rid of the old system of distrust, of disease, of corporate profits at the expense of health and well-being, of basically the rich and the ultra elite preying on everybody else. So we have a new world coming, and let's manifest it and make it happen. Thank you so much, my friends. As always, share, subscribe, and share your comments. I look forward to reading them. Take care. Much love.
Freedom of Information Act leaks CIA documents, future pole shift, 1,000-mile-per-hour winds, and 10,000-foot high tidal wave burying North America in less than 3 hours. It's titled The Adam and Eve Story by Chan Thomas. I was fortunate enough to actually find a 1965 copy, autographed and inscribed by the author. Just ordered it, should get this any day now. Super excited. But this is literally a sanitized copy that I'm going to share with you now. And yeah, they put some hand sanitizer on it to make it palatable for you guys. But why in the world would the Central Intelligence Agency classify a 65-page story of cataclysms, Adam and Eve, unless there's something to it? Maybe it isn't just highly concentrated swamp gas from Uranus. Let me read some excerpts from this to you guys right now. An audible low rumble grows to a thundering roar. The earthquake starts unlike any in recorded history. California, the mountain shakes like ferns in a breeze. Pacific Ocean rears back, piling into a mountain of water more than 2 miles in height, then races eastward. With the force of 1,000 armies, the wind destroys everything in its path with supersonic bombardment. A mountain of Pacific seawater follows the wind east, burying Los Angeles and San Francisco like grains of sand. Nothing stops the onslaught of wind and ocean. Across the continent, 1,000-mile-per-hour winds and earthquakes leave not one place untouched. Any places the Earth's molten sublayer breaks through and spreads a sea of white-hot liquid fire, adding to the doomlicious Armageddon exotica. I added that. Do you like that? Within 3 hours, the wall of water buries the land under 2 miles of water, coast to coast. Antarctica and Greenland, with their ice caps, now rotate around the Earth in the torrid zone. What does that mean? Well, let me show you. Here's the torrid zone. Hold on a second. Will you just look at it? There we go. The torrid zone. Well, that's where Costa Rica is. So you're saying that the ice caps are going to be in central Earth now. Central torrid zone. Wow, that's quite the change, folks. That's quite the change. Now, let's go back to this sanitized copy. Once again, I can't wait to get the original autographed and inscribed by the author. I'm so glad that I was fortunate enough to get a copy of this. Super excited. But let me share with you a little bit here. Talks about the next cataclysm, the great floods, the story, the event, Genesis, and the conclusion of the author. But the next cataclysm, like Noah's 6,500 years ago, like Adam and Eve's 11,500 years ago, this too will come to pass. So I shared with you just bits and pieces, with a rumble so low as to be inaudible, growing, throbbing, then turning into a thundering roar. The earthquake starts, only it's not like any earthquake in recorded history. Now that sounds like also maybe some type of weaponry used to cause the earthquake. In California, the mountains shake like ferns in a breeze. The mighty Pacific rears back and piles up into a mountain of water more than 2 miles high, then starts its race eastward. So, a mile is what, 5,400 and something feet? That's 11,000 feet, spanning the North American continent from west to east in 3 hours. So that would make me think that even Denver, the mile-high city, is not going to be safe unless, here's what I think. Let's say that there's some validity to this vision, to this story, that a 2-mile-high tidal wave starts from California. It's not going to be 2 miles by the time 2 miles in height by the time it reaches Colorado. With the force of 1,000 armies, the wind attacks, ripping, shredding everything in its supersonic bombardment. The unbelievable mountain of Pacific seawater follows the wind eastward, burying Los Angeles and San Francisco as if they were but grains of sand. Nothing but nothing stops the relentless, overwhelming onslaught of wind and ocean across the continent. The 1,000-mile-per-hour wind wreaks its unholy vengeance everywhere. Mercilessly, unceasingly, every living thing is ripped into shreds while being blown across the countryside, and the earthquake leaves no place untouched. In many places, the Earth's molten sublayer breaks through and spreads a sea of white-hot liquid fire to add to the Holocaust. Sounds like Yellowstone. Within 3 hours, the fantastic wall of water moves across the continent, burying the wind-ravaged land under 2 miles of seething water coast to coast. In a fraction of a day, all vestiges of civilization are gone, and the great cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas, New York, are nothing but legends. Barely a stone is left where millions walked just a few hours before. A few lucky ones who managed to find shelter from the screaming wind on the lee side of Pikes Peak watch the sea of molten fire break through the quaking valleys below. The raging waters follow, piling higher and higher, steaming over the molten earth fire and rising almost to their feet. Only great mountains such as this one can withstand the cataclysmic onslaught. North America is not alone in her death throes. Central America suffers the same cannonade. And Gatorade. Would you like some Gatorade? It has battery acid in it, but it's good for you. What was that stuff they were putting in Gatorade? And then that little girl exposed them, and they're like, oh, okay, you're right, we're sorry, we won't put battery acid in anymore. It was some type of, it wasn't battery acid, but it was some type of nasty chemical. And the news made it seem as if the little people won because Gatorade decided to take this nasty chemical out of their product. It's like, okay, we're sorry. All right, I'm divagating. Let's get back to this. A few lucky ones who managed to find shelter from the screaming wind on the lee side of Pike Peak watched the sea of molten fire break through the quaking valleys below. The raging waters follow, piling higher and higher, streaming over the molten earth fire and rising almost to their feet. North America is not alone in her death throes. Central America suffers the same cannonade. Wind, earth, fire, and South America finds the Andes not high enough to stop the cataclysmic violence pounded out by nature in her berserker rage. In less than a day, Ecuador, Peru, and western Brazil are shaken madly by the devastating earthquake, burned by molten earth fire, buried under cubic miles of torrential Pacific seas, and then turned into frozen hell. Everything freezes. Man, beast, plant, and mud are all rock hard in less than 4 hours. Europe cannot escape the onslaught. The raging Atlantic the Atlantic piles higher and higher upon itself, following the screeching wind eastward. The Alps, Pyrenees, Urals, Scandinavian mountains are shaken and heaved even higher before the wall of water strikes. Western Africa, the sands of the Saharas vanish in nature's wrath. Under savage attack by wind and ocean, the area bounded by the Congo, South Africa, and Kenya suffers only severe earthquakes and winds. No inundation. Survivors there marvel at the sun standing still in the sky for nearly half a day. So the sun stands still for half a day. Eastern Siberia, the Orient suffer a strange fate indeed, as though a giant subterranean skith sweeps away the Earth's foundations, accompanied by the wind and its screaming symphony of supersonic death and destruction. As the Arctic basin leaves its polar home, Eastern Siberia, Manchuria, China, and Burma are subjected to the same annihilation as South America: wind, earth fire, inundation, and freezing. Jungle animals are shredded to ribbons by the wind, piled into mountains of flesh and bone, and buried under avalanches of seawater and mud. Then comes the terrible, paralyzing cold. Not man, nor beast, nor plant, nor earth is left unfrozen in the entire Eastern Asian continent, most of which remains below sea level. A few lucky people survive the fantastic winds and quakes east of the Urals. Wow. Antarctica and Greenland, with their ice caps, now rotate around the Earth in the torrid zone, and the fury of wind and inundation marches on for 6 days and nights. During the 6th day, the oceans start to settle in their new homes, running off the high grounds. On the 7th day, the horrendous rampage is over. The Arctic Ice Age is ended, and a new Stone Age begins. The oceans, the great homogenizers, have laid down another deep layer of mud over the existing strata, and the Great Plains is exposed in the Grand Canyon, Painted Desert, and Badlands. Love those areas, by the way. Love the Badlands. Love the Painted Desert. Haven't been to the Grand Canyon yet, but I've been to the Canyon Lands, which is like 2 Grand Canyons connected together. And I like the Canyon Lands more because you can actually go into the Canyon Lands. Go check out the Island in the sky. Oh, wait, I'm divagating. Let's go back. The Bay of Bengal Basin, just east of India, is now at the North Pole. The Pacific Ocean, just west of Peru, is at the South Pole. Greenland and Antarctica, now rotating equatorially in the torrid zone, find their ice caps dissolving madly in the tropical heat. Massive walls of water and ice surge towards the oceans, taking everything from mountain to plains in gushing, heaving paths, creating immense seasonal moraines. Did I say that right? In less than 25 years, the ice caps are gone, and the oceans around the world rise over 200 feet with the newfound water. The torrid zone will be shrouded in a fog for generations from the enormous amounts of moisture poured into the atmosphere by the melting ice caps. Now ice caps begin to form in the new polar areas. Greenland and Antarctica emerge with verdant tropical foliage. Sorry guys, I can't read. English isn't my first language. Australia is the new unexplored continent in the north temperate zone, with only a few handfuls of survivors populating its vastness. New York lies at the bottom of the Atlantic, shattered, melted by earth fire, and covered by unbelievable amounts of mud. Of San Francisco and Los Angeles, not a trace is left. Egypt emerges from its Mediterranean inundation, new and higher, still the land of the ages, the commonplace of our time, because the mysterious Baalbek of the new era. Well, I'm going to stop there and let you get your own copy if you can find one, or when I get my autographed, inscribed copy in the next few days, I will read more to you. This is pretty spooky, and it makes sense at the same time. This guy, or this author that put this information together, took information from Casey, Nostradamus, and others, and looking at the forecast, has very similar, eerie forecasts and projections. I just said that twice. Oops. When you look at the timelines, are we getting close to this event? And is there a way to offset this event? Is this a natural disaster? Is this a man-made disaster? Is this something that can be diverted? Pick up your copy today, The Adam and Eve Story of Chan Thomas, before it's too late. Question everything, be excellent to each other, and be the change you want to see.